Take a ride. We suggested maybe instead of sitting in a boardroom and doing a PowerPoint, we could actually just ride the bus and we could go over this here. Bob's an old bus rider from back in his days. Rob currently rides, so and you ride too?
Yes.
Oh, good. So some will be familiar with Met Transit. Now, because I don't have an overhead, I did a PowerPoint. Handed this out. We'll kind of just go over this and then we'll answer questions. If you turn the page, it's the first 2 pages, just basically the history of Met. I think one thing unique about Met is in on the second page, let's see if I can find it, stand here and stand up.
August 1972.
In 72, when it was reorganized, that was when 6 years prior to that, there were at least 3 people in our community that wanted to get federal funding for public transportation. Robert Buckmaster, Lewis Beecher, and someone else, I can't think who that was, but they went to Washington, D.C. and advocated for federal funds for public transit, mainly for capital buses. And the result of that is they got the very first grant in the United States for public transit capital. The grant number is sitting in, the grant is actually sitting in Kansas City, the actual one, at the FTA office, and it's grant 0001. So it's the first in the nation grant for public transportation and thank you to Lewis Beecher and
Another
Robert
thing he did.
So anyway, there was a reorganization for Met in 1981, and this is when the cities of Cedar Falls, Waterloo, Evansdale, and Elk Run decided to create this system under Chapter 28E of the Iowa Code. Since then, in the late 80s, Evansdale has dropped out, and so has Elk Run.
Oh, really?
Mainly because of funding and somewhat ridership. Evansdale was very good in Elk Run in the mid-80s with John Deere's going strong. But when that employment kind of went down, so did ridership. So they felt it wasn't necessary to continue public transportation in their area. We do have paratransit service at Evansdale, but they pay for that separately. They're not on the 2080 agreement. So it's just a 2080 agreement between Waterloo and Cedar Falls. Okay. On page 4 is just an overview. That is the federal designated urban transit system for this area, which means we are required to provide fixed route transportation service, and with that, a requirement of providing what they call complementary paratransit service, which is door-to-door service for persons with disabilities only, not necessarily elderly. The requirement is for disabled folks. There's some other requirements that go along with that, but we provide the 2 types of service: the regular fixed route, that's the regular bus service, and the paratransit. On page 5 is just a listing of our board of directors. And we're fortunate enough to have with us tonight Rose Middleton. She's our board chair. And I don't see any other board members here. So, the 28E agreement requires or calls for, based on the hours of service back then, Waterloo appoints 9 board members and Cedar Falls 4. Now, one of Cedar Falls, what they've decided to do has always been one from UNI. So they always have, usually it's a student president every year. And then the other 3 are appointed by their council in Barron, and the 9, of course, in Waterloo are appointed by Steve and his group. This is climate. So, next page. Again, we talked about page 6, the fixed route and paratransit. Page 7. This is kind of an overview of our funding. Funding has been very, very tight for public transit nationwide, particularly on the capital side to purchase buses. Met's operating budget for this current year, FY19, is a little bit over $5 million. And you can see how that's broke out. About 34.5% come from local governments, Waterloo, Cedar Falls being number 1 and number 2, a little bit from Evansdale, a little bit from Blackhawk County. The federal money is 33.5, and that's for operating only. Contracts. Actually, that has went up a little bit recently, but that's mostly made up of contracts we have for on our paratransit system for Medicaid transportation. When they privatized the Medicare program, The MCOs are contracting with transit agencies, public and private, to provide those rides. And we do quite a bit of transportation for 2 of the MCOs. It's very rocky. It still is sometimes getting paid. They don't want to pay you all the time, but right now is probably the best we've been since they've started. So we're starting to get reimbursed what our costs are. Fare box, you can see that's quite low. That's 9.1. The reason that's low is twofold. Your average transit system probably is around the 12 to 13%. That don't sound like very much. It means the money we get for fares, that's the part of our budget, so it's heavily subsidized. But in our area, when I go back to the Medicaid rides, a lot of those folks that we switched over on contract for Medicaid used to ride the bus or paratransit where they paid a fare. So as the contract went up, fares ratio went down what they paid. The highest I know of anywhere, I believe, is CTA in Chicago, and their fare box recovery is about 19%. So it's still heavily subsidized no matter where you go. And then the state puts in very little operating, Bob.
Yeah.
And Bob's tried to help us in this, so has Senator Danielson and the rest of our representatives. But we get about $300,000 a year from the state of Iowa for operations only. And how that's paid, or how that is generated through the state, it's an amount equal to 4% of the fees on new registrations collected on the sale of motor vehicles. So it's not directly that, because they can't directly take it out of that, they take it out of somewhere else, but it's equal to 4% of the registration fees on new vehicles. We tried to get that up to 5%, even 6%. Problem is, we'd be going up against the highway folks. And we know how powerful they can be. So it's difficult. The state also the federal government funds our buses, but it's a pass-through the state. They'll allow whatever it is, whatever transportation bill comes out. If the state is granted an $8 million grant, it's put in one pot, and DOT, the Office of Public Transit, allocates those funds based on a formula that we all have come up with. We have over 1,800 vehicles in the state of Iowa. They're all ranked by age, miles. So right now, I think we're at about $160 million need to replace those vehicles that are past their useful life. We get about $8 million a year. So this bus here is a 8-year-old bus. Probably have it for at least 15. It's rated at 10 years. It's 8 years old now. We'll probably have it for 15 to 20 years, just because the funding is so short. Okay, that's kind of an overview on our operations. The next page, page 8, local funding, and for cities that have a transit levy. In our area, that is Cedar Falls and Waterloo, and that is how they fund transit for their operating funds. This was just released by the DOT, and this is as of last fiscal year, of all the transit levies in the different communities and how much aid they generate to the transit company. The state limit's 95 cents. So anybody can go all the way up to 95 cents. But again, this is a tax increase if you increase the transit levy. But this is how we are funded from the cities. The one thing about that, any funds generated by the transit levy by the cities can only be used for transit. So in order to cut transit, they'd have to cut the transit. They can't shift funds from transit to another program. Page 9 is just kind of an overview of our system, our company. We have 4 full-time employees in management. It's myself as general manager. We have a fixed route operations manager. We have a paratransit operations manager, and then a finance manager. Although our 28E agreement states and calls for the cities of Cedar Falls and Waterloo to help with our operations, we don't ask that. We never have. We do everything in-house. As far as, I think some systems, I think Des Moines, they get help for a payroll and different things. But we found we could do that all in-house, and that's fine. We have 7 maintenance employees. That's actually, I should say, transit coordinators. We have 5 full-time employees. They're the dispatchers upstairs. Schedule all the rides, both fixed route and paratransit. We have 1 full-time office assistant. The drivers, we have 19 full-time and 1 part-time currently in fixed route, which is our regular bus service. In paratransit, we have 14 and 3. All bargaining unit employees are represented by the ATU, the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 1192, and in fact, the president is the one who's driving us tonight. Okay, page 10.
It's out.
This is our fixture. Yes. Yes, we do are right now. The problem is we're hired for part-time, and that's difficult. We're having to look at maybe even hiring some full-time to get drivers. It's a very good job once they get to full-time, good pay, good benefits, not so good part-time. So we're looking at some solutions. We're short right now.
I used to drive a school bus.
Oh.
And they are having terrible time.
I think everywhere is our counterpart in the county, which is RTC, which is run by Intercon. They're in the same boat too. They're short drivers over there. I hear it statewide. There's just a shortage of drivers. Well, a shortage of a lot of jobs.
It should be like the Catholic schools. My principal just called me up one day and said, "We need bus drivers, you're it."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's difficult.
All righty there.
Do you have substitute drivers if a driver is sick? Is there a substitute?
Yeah.
Or-
Oh yeah. We have part-timers
Okay.
like out here, but we also have on fixed route, well actually on both. Fixed route, we have what we call the extra board. It's usually 7 spots. Corey, you're extra board, right?
Yeah.
And they drive everything. He can get called in. He can get called in for 4 hours and work 12. It's just a variety. But that's where they make the money, is on the extra board.
Yeah.
Corey probably made about $100,000 last year, didn't you?
I wish. I wish.
But if you did, he earned it. Okay, our fixed route system, we have 12 fixed routes. 7 that operate in Waterloo, solely in Waterloo. 1 solely in Cedar Falls, and that is Route 9 that covers the industrial area, north and south areas of Cedar Falls. 2 routes that run between Waterloo and Cedar Falls. 1 route that runs between Hawkeye Community College and UNI. And then 1 route that runs on the UNI campus, and that route is 100% paid by UNI. There's no subsidies in that route. It's actually funded through the student government. They fund it. And then another weekend route during the school year, they also contract with us and pay the full amount for a route called Safe Ride. And it runs from 9:30 to 2:30 on Friday and Saturday nights, and it runs from the campus down to Main Street in that area. So hopefully they'll ride that instead of driving.
Good idea.
It's working real well. We have seen that the ridership decrease on both those routes. We think it, and we're hearing this all over everywhere, due to Uber. Uber's quick, fairly cheap, and that has cut into transit in several areas.
Can I ask how much it costs to get a bus ride for one route?
One, if your regular fare is $1.50, and we haven't increased that since 2002.
Wow.
I think in 2002 we were the highest in the state for quite some time. Now some have caught us or even went above us just a little bit. But we have to realize in an area, in our people, most of our riders are transit dependent, which means they have no other choice, and typically they're low income. Any increase could cause a problem. You can raise the quarter, and you're not going to generate that much funds, where it could generate a hardship on those folks. We'll look at that. The board always is looking at to monitor the fares and see if that's needed at some point.
And I have one other question. Do you have like a bus pass that's so much per month type thing?
Yeah. On the fares, the fare is $1.50 per trip, but if you're disabled, a senior, or a student, it's 75 cents.
Can you
Now-
buy a monthly?
Yeah, and on the monthly, we actually were,
If you're a senior, it's 75 cents.
we just switched this, and this is there. We used to sell monthly passes, so they were good for the month of January, February. Well, we went to the automated fare boxes, and we can also print our own passes, or we can order them to go through there. We're actually, they now do 30-day passes. Now, why is that good? Well, if you bought one for January, you had to use it in January. Now, if you get one, it doesn't even start until the very first time you use it. So if you can buy one for somebody for Christmas, and it's good, the very first time they use it.
And what better way to say I love you with a 30-day pass?
There we go.
How much does it cost a month?
Monthly is
Okay, I can make it.
Is it up
Corey,
there?
what do you think about roundabouts?
$45.
They're not too bad. At
It's
first
a
I
lot
didn't
of
like
money
them.
for somebody who
They're not
doesn't
too
have
bad.
money.
Mhm.
Most drivers
But
like
if you're
it.
riding a lot,
I
for
know
me,
there's
it's a
probably
great
some
deal.
issues, but I think they like it because it's quicker. And we can get through it. So
From where to where do you have to go?
better to get stuck at a light.
I'm
yeah.
downtown Cedar Falls, then I ride to
Okay,
UNI
other
campus.
services that we offer
on Route
every year,
9.
the Cattle Congress
Love it.
special. We'll run a bus from downtown out to the Cattle Congress. We are providing service on all the way till 12:30 on Friday and Saturday night of Pride Fest. They came to our board, requested that we extend our service those evenings. The board passed that.
Very good.
And then we also we also provided service this last year to the Waterloo Blackhawks game, and that was due to construction in that area in the parking. And thanks to the city of Waterloo, they paid for that service in addition to their subsidies. One thing Waterloo said is, the money that we give you each year is for our fixed route paratransit. We don't think you should use those funds to pay for that extra service, and they found the money to pay for that. I know the Blackhawks appreciate that, and a lot of people do too.
Yeah.
Okay, page 11 kind of gives you an overview of our fixed route too. Fixed route again is our regular bus service. We average about 1,278 rides per day on the fixed route buses, or 839 on Saturdays. And of that, you can see 65% is either elderly or disabled on the fixed route. One thing that we have in the Waterloo area at Cedar Falls, our paratransit system, we actually provide the most paratransit system than any system in the state per capita. On overall rides, Des Moines beats us, but we're ahead of Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, everybody, and we'll get to that, but we're very proud of that. The Cedar Valley is known somewhat of a training area for persons with disabilities, and they need to get there. And although that transportation is much more expensive than this, it's needed, and the city's funded both Waterloo and Cedar Falls. Okay, page 13. Now, somebody would say, well, fixed route ridership, what's it been doing? We like to base our performance on rides per hour. If you look at overall rides, that sometimes cannot be very accurate. I'll give you an example. If you take total rides, the Panther Shuttle, the UNI folks decided last year to extend the route to 40 minutes and have less trips. So that resulted in less riders. And so we like to say, how are we doing per hour? We have been decreasing. In 16, we were 12.6 rides per hour, 11.9, and then last year was 10.4. We think, and I'm not accusing anybody of this, but we know it. We lost ridership last year due to the detours and the road construction in this area. It's needed, we're for it, it's just that we cannot get around. We constantly run late. The east side of Waterloo with 63 being closed for trains, we go to the next detour, the driver's caught there, he's circling around. So what happens? We run late. We send out supervisors and cars to try to make up. But quite frankly, it's not very reliable when somebody wants to ride that bus. We'll talk about the ones that have a smartphone, how that helps, because we have an app where they can see where the bus is. But it's hurt us. We know it's needed. We're not at all complaining about that. But ridership has decreased on fixed route. Page 14, again, I talked about the UNI service, the Panther Shuttle, and the Safe Ride. I think it was 2008, we worked at the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls to build that transit hub up there in Cedar Falls by the college. A very nice area. I think that's very well received by the community and by the students.
We got some state monies to help do that.
The state did kick in some of that. Bob wasn't going to let me forget that.
No, I just remember it.
You're just saying.
And thank you, Bob.
Just saying.
Okay, page 15 is just, again, our paratransit service. That's 14 routes per day, approximately. When I say approximately, anybody who is certified to use paratransit, and there's like a 10-page certification, you have to have a disability first. And the government says, although we kind of don't go exactly that, they say it must be impossible for the person to be able to access a fixed route. Well, we live in Iowa, and it may be difficult in the winter to get to the bus stop. By them, I think it's impossible in some cases. So we will certify those folks to ride paratransit. So how that process works, they get certified. What's good for them is they can call in all the way up until 4 o'clock, for example, today, for a ride tomorrow. Now, that's good for them. They could call in sooner too, but I have dispatchers doing all these routes all day long by a computer program. We don't know until about 6 o'clock at night how many routes we're going to have or how many drivers we need. It could be 14 routes, it could be up to 16 in any day. We just never know how many rides we're going to have. We have a good idea.
Is this bus handicapped accessible?
Every one of our, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll brag about this. Met Transit was the very first system in Iowa to be 100% accessible, their whole fleet, since 1993. We were the 3rd in the Midwest and the 5th in the United States to be 100% accessible. Our mission has always been that transportation like this should be for everybody, not just the able-bodied, anybody. If you're using a mobility aid like a wheelchair, you should be able to catch the bus just like myself or anybody else.
So does the bus go down?
Yeah. Right up here is the ramp. And the good thing about these buses, it's electronic ramp, but if for some reason it's down, the driver can use it manually. This front actually kneels down, and they come right on. Seats will flip up, the driver will secure them in their locations.
So if somebody has to be on the route, or is there also possibility to get picked up when you live off the route?
If it's fixed route, they have to be on the route. But if they want to ride paratransit, we pick them up at their residence.
You do?
Yeah, we offer door-to-door service. We'll go to their door and take them to where they're going, to the door. Paratransit ridership, now that's based different. That's on overall rides on page 17. That kind of goes up and down. Last year we ended up at 63,338. 17, 64,000 rides, and in 16 we had 60,000 rides. So you can see it's heavily used. Again, it's very, very expensive transportation. The cost per ride to Met, to provide a ride on paratransit, is about $25 a ride.
Wow.
We can charge $3 is the most we can charge. Federal law says you can only charge twice the amount you charge on fixed route. That's the max. So we charge $1.50 on here. The most we can charge on paratransit is $3. That's why we do the certification process. And if anybody can ride fixed route, it's good for us. It's actually better for them if they're able to ride it. The cost per ride on this fixed route bus is about $7.90. And we get $1.50 back on regular fares, $75 on the others.
So how many people do you have, like in Friendship Village, even though they have their own transportation? Do you pick up people at senior centers and Western Home and that kind of thing?
Yes. If they fill out the application and they're qualified, doesn't matter if they have somebody else that can give them transportation. That's their right to be able to have that. On page 18, kind of some new things that met in the last few years. In 2016, we actually switched, and this is kind of funny too, because we used to schedule, we've been scheduling rides by a computer-based program since 1993, the old DOS version. And we've upgraded to Windows over time, and then in 2016, we actually switched vendors. And we went to a new program called Echo Lane, which gives us any type of report you want on paratransit, funding categories. But with that, it actually sends the rides now to a tablet in a bus instead of the paper manifest the drivers used to carry, pick up and drop off, and they would cross off. Well, now it's all done by a tablet on the paratransit buses. Much more efficient. We think it's better, and we've also seen our rides increase on efficiency instead of the paper. We also have the ability, and we're looking into it, adding on to this each year, where riders can schedule their own ride on a smartphone or on a tablet with some restrictions. They can cancel their ride. We like that part because we can't charge. The federal law says if we go to your house and you don't come out, we can only penalize you after so many. We can't charge you for that trip. Now it does cost us to go there, but we can't charge. If they could cancel their trip at home, it would be much more convenient. So we're looking at that add-on too. My favorite one, last year we introduced our app. And it's an app, but it's not an app. And I think Rob is one of the best writers to talk about this because his example in using it is really good. Actually what it is you go to our website, mettransit.org, and on the top left it says real-time map. And if you want to get it on your smartphone or on your tablet, and you can do it right on the website. It'll list all of our routes. If you click on one of those routes, it will show you where that bus is in real time. If it's on Rainbow and you're waiting down for them, you can just go out when you see the bus get close. But in order to put it on your phone or a tablet, you have to add it to your home screen from the website. We did that because, and then it puts the Met app right on there, the Met logo. Now it's technically not an app. We did that for 2 reasons. That way, if you download it, any platform can use it, whether it's Android or iPhone. And we saved $20,000 by doing that. So it was a win-win. We love it. It's being used. I know Rob uses it all the time when he goes to work. So.
I'm happy to show you after the ride. If you want to see it on my phone, I'll show it to you.
Okay, and then the other thing we just started last year too is we bought a new software program. And part of our agreement locally is INTERCOG, Iowa Northland Regional Council of Governments. Just looking to see where we're at. Is actually our planning agency. They help us with planning. Last year we bought this planning tool, and it's an internet-based platform that if we get online right now, you can see every route that we have. It's all built in. You can look at a route. You can see how many people are employed in that area, how many residents, minorities, all kinds of information. Plus, we put in our costs. So if we're looking at, this is what we're using to route for our major route restructure, is we can take a route. And let's say if Steve or Mark or somebody says, hey, I want this bus in my area, just what's it look like if it goes over here? We just drag it over and everything changes. How many employment, how much that cost, it's all real time. And that's something that we're going to use as we're doing our routes. It's much better than to stand in front of the county with a PowerPoint, where this is just real time. You can answer most all your questions. We've had requests in Waterloo, and we're looking at it. We did a study with the Cedar Valley Alliance on providing transportation out on Airline Highway to Omega and all the businesses out there. It was a very, very good response. It's wanted, it's needed out there. Cedar Falls, we continually get calls and want more service in the Cedar Falls north area and south. Mainly the industrial park, the Walmart, Lanes area. So that's an area that we're working on too, and we can show the council at a meeting right up on the screen. Here's what we have. This is what it costs. If you move it, it's either going to increase the cost or decrease it. Here's how it's going to affect your residents in that area based on minorities and other factors.
Does it have the ability, if you increase the levy, how much more money would go into the system? Is that part of it too?
No, it'll just give the
Oh,
cost.
that's too bad.
But that'll probably be my ending.
Okay.
And then the last thing that we're working on, and I got to tell you, I've been with Met for 38 years, and I have never, in this last few years, seen so much cooperation between the cities and Met. At Cedar Falls, when they did university up there, they were constantly in contact with us, making sure our buses could get around roundabouts. They built the new turn-ins. Waterloo the same way. The staff calls all the time. I'm involved in the meetings, and if you go to INTERCOG and they have these drawings about different things, you'll see Met bus lanes. That means a lot, because I think for too long there we were always thought afterwards. Let's do it, let's build it. Oh, Met, we want you to do this. And I think it's been great the last few years.
So this is one thing that I know we talked about handling of moving voters is people that work second shift or odd shifts. I see that your routes end at like 6:15. Are you looking at trying to put something in for late workers?
Yes. Again, I think we're going to get to the funding again here, I think. And it's all pure funding.
Yeah.
Des Moines, up until a year ago, stopped at 6:15. It's very, very difficult to provide evening service when you're in a smaller community because of the cost. It is needed. It is needed. We get that all the time, and a lot of it's for jobs. The federal government, up until 3 years ago, had a special program called JARC, and it was called Job Access Reverse Commute. The thing about that JARC grant was to get people to and from work, and we used that in Cedar Falls, and the federal government did away with it. They said, no more funding, we're not going to fund that anymore. What a better way to fund transit, get people to and from work. That's the grant we would have applied for. The only way we're going to be able to do that, with the federal funding being pretty stagnant, This last year, we actually got a little more than a 1% raise increase, and the operational cost of having to maintain older equipment because we can't replace it like we should hurts our ability to put more service on the street. What I'm going to do and what we're going to do, I'll give Steve, Margaret, Rob, I guess, a heads up, is we're looking at probably not this coming December for your budget year, but the following one, of having this total route restructuring program done. But there's going to be options. Now, I can tell council people, I can tell the mayor, this is what you need, this is what you got to have. I don't answer to taxpayers, they do. So it's going to be up to them to decide what's best for their communities, because we will be, for options, there will be an increase in the transit levy. Transit levy is not anything to be really afraid of. Right now in Cedar Falls, a person with a $100,000 house pays about $20.91 for Met to operate within their city. That same house in Waterloo is $61.70 a year for public transit. If you increase it a couple cents, you may increase it like $10 a year, and that could generate quite a bit of funds for the transit agency to add service. But again, I'm sensitive to the need. I lived in this community all my life. I know what taxes mean to folks. So if we're going to propose it, and we're going to try to support it, but in ending, it's going to be up to the local communities. We're always searching for special grants, state grants, federal grants to do that. They're just not there at this time, and I don't foresee that happening in the near future with what's going on in D.C. and maybe even at the State House. But we know it. We hear it all the time. I was with Iowa Workforce a couple weeks ago. Number one question, when are you going to add service in the evening? The route restructuring program that we're looking at right now, and some of the big moves in some of the larger communities and some of the smaller, is they're restructuring their routes to provide more frequent service and not as much coverage. I'm not sure about that. Yes, frequent service is good, but well, I'll use Steve for an example. Well, no, Mark, whatever ward you're in. If I say in your ward, I'm not getting very many riders, so I'm going to move it and do frequency, she may have a problem with that. She may have people that, you may not have a lot, but you may have people in that area that truly do need the service. The other problem we may have is remember that if we cut some of the coverage out and go to more main lines up and down for frequency, people with disabilities who now ride fixed route may not be able to get it. They have to ride paratransit, and that costs us much more to provide. So yes, I hear the, I'm going to say the millennials. I'm going to go ahead and say that. They're the ones that want this frequency. Come on, we don't want to ride the bus for a half hour or 40 minutes. We want to catch it and then catch it on the way back. We'd love to do that. But you either got, with the limited funds, you pick one or the other. And with this route restructuring, we're going to throw in some options to do that. There's always better ways to do it. We're just not going to sit here and business as usual. We have, for 5 straight years, decreased expenses, whether it be through aggressive procurement or however. We've seen this coming. We know there's going to be a need. We can't rely solely on tax money to do that. So we're trying to do our part too. But that'll be a presentation that we'll have next year. And if that were to happen, whatever is done would go into effect in July of 2020.
Thank you.
Mark, I have a question.
Yes.
For example, you have businesses in very different regions of the city. How do you fulfill the need for people to get there? I can't think of anything right now, but for example, Omega, it's off.
Yeah. We never went to Omega, so we never had that. But a good example, I think, would be is the North Crossing up here. When Unity Point built the urgent care and those other buildings, they actually called the city first, thinking they were a city department, we were. Then they contacted me and said, we want the bus to go through there. Well, we try not to add any service because we're running late already because of the detours. But this one here worked out well. It didn't cost us any time. Instead of going Donald and turning right on Logan, we just go through there, and we're getting passengers out there. So, but we know that North Crossing is probably going to develop further in time.
Yeah.
To the south out here, look at the area you want to do quick stuff. Veterans building out there. Service is going to be needed. So Waterloo is the north-south. Cedar Falls is the south mainly for right now. There's been some talk about North Cedar, right, service out there. But yes, there are areas that We try to accommodate it, we get the calls, but we just can't stretch the routes anymore. And I can't justify taking the route unless there's absolutely no riders away from one area and putting it into another, hoping we'll get riders.
You mean North Cedar doesn't have a
No,
service?
they don't. They've been in service for about 20 years. And that's up to, again, I don't think we would be doing our job if we didn't tell the cities what we're hearing and what we think. But knowing that they have to fund it through this transit levy and they have to answer the general public, I agree. We need night service. My priority in our area is to increase service at least 3 hours a night, to increase service in the Cedar Falls area out there, which is sorely needed, and then to get out to Airline Highway and Waterloo. That's kind of my top
So you want us to lobby for increased levy?
Absolutely. I gotta be careful here though.
Did you hear that up there?
Does she want her? Do I want her to lobby for the increased transit levy?
We'd like to see more of it now in city council. Have you done anything with the Burmese in conjunction with Tyson and the Church Road neighborhood?
Yes. One thing about our board in the city of Waterloo for years especially has told us that they were not going to fund directly new businesses outside of our current area, and that's Tyson. Tyson, over the years, I probably met with them a half a dozen times. We had a great program worked out. Even today, they could purchase bus passes for their employees. They're 100% tax deductible. They can take it off their tax at no cost. It could be a benefit to their employees. Every year they want to take a look at it. Every year they decide not to do it.
Why?
Cost, because they have to pay for that service to go out there. Waterloo's not going to pay for it. They're not going to increase their funds. What they're giving us is for the service that we have now. Tyson's has to pay something and they don't want to pay it. The other problem with Tyson's, and it could be in defense of Tyson's too, is if we're out there, we got to charge. Well, they have different shifts and sometimes they go over depending on the number they have.
Right.
So if we get out there at 11 o'clock, they're supposed to be out, they don't get out until midnight, we're sitting there, we're charging. So it's just not the straight shifts sometimes like Deers have, where they get off at 3:30 and that's it. It's a variety out there.
Difficult.
Steve, what was your, is that the only one?
Yeah.
Okay.
When a person comes up that ramp in a wheelchair, do they need any help from the driver?
If they want help, if they can ask for help, the driver will do it. Some don't, you dare ask them for help.
Steep, yeah.
Hey,
Well-
I'm gonna hop off real quick. I'm gonna talk to Lane and see where they want this.
Okay. No, it's not
Thank
very
you.
steep. The driver will actually get out and push them up if they need help. But what we learned in transit and all the training is you don't approach it because that can backfire.
Right.
A lot of the folks with disabilities, they've perfected that. They want that independence. We had a driver that we got a complaint on because he got on. He was visually impaired. Kind of like you. The driver says, "Let me know where you want off," and he yelled at that driver. He said, "I'll tell you, I count corners and all that. I don't need your help. You embarrass me by doing that."
Oh my goodness.
So you got to be careful. The driver was trying to help out.
Thank you so much, Mark. This is really good information.
Your goal is for 2020 to have new things in place. About 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
We will have a new plan. Even if we have to do it with the same money we have now.
Okay.
I'd like to see two other good things in place in 2020.
I have one more. I think in your packet. Do you have a very last page in yours in a letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to brag about that a little bit because every 3 years, every transit system in the United States gets reviewed by the federal government. And I don't know, I've been through, every 3 years, I've been through 10 of these, 11 of them, or whatever.
Mind if I grab
But
or just do this one real quick?
We were the second in the nation